afternoon. This is Mark's Musings, and we are here at wctv.org in Wilmington, Massachusetts. And we have our podcast being broadcast here. And normally the podcast, I do an interview with local authors, or I might talk about the art of writing. But today we have with us a guest who I met at a writers group that I belong to at the Wilmington Public Library by the name of Donovan, who is a local author and has written several books. One of them is called Chasing Mayflies, and the other is a Difficult Crossing. Welcome, Vincent.
Hey, Mark. How are you today? Great to see you again.
Sounds great. The weather outside has really turned wonderful, hasn't it?
Incredible. It's like spring out there.
Spring,
I love it.
And all the snow is going to be gone, and then we're going to look forward to another snowstorm coming up.
You can bet on that, for sure.
Anyway, like I was saying, I met Donovan at a guest presentation for the writers group in Wilmington at the Memorial Library, where he described his trials and tribulations with becoming an author. He has won several literary awards, and his book, Chasing Mayflies, was a 2017 finalist for the Christian Small Publishers Association Book Award of the Year. He lives in Haverhill, Massachusetts. I have a few other things here, but I will sort of let him take the ball right now. So tell us a little bit about your writing style, Vincent.
Well, thank you, Mark. Again, I'm just delighted to be here today to talk to you about writing and certainly a lifelong journey, shall we say. I think I was telling you when I had the opportunity and the pleasure of meeting you and the other writers about a month or two ago, is that I always, even as a child, wanted to become an author. I attended St. Joseph's School in Salem, New Hampshire, and I think I had recounted to you and the other writers in Wilmington that when I was a small boy, I used to have to actually memorize speeches from presidents, and the speech that I recall the most is one by Robert Kennedy, and in that speech he said, "Some men see things as they are and ask why. I see things that never were and say why not." And that inspirational message from Bernard Shaw that RFK adopted has been kind of a keystone of my life to inspire me to do things, to think big. And naturally, so I went to Merrimack College. I got a degree in English.
Wonderful.
When I got out of school, times were tough, and so I ended up going back to school 7 years nights to get my MBA, and I had a wonderful career with Millipore, which is now part of Merck KGA, and I became vice president there and got to travel the world, but I always missed and never forgot my desire to be a writer, and my daughters would really were incredibly tenacious in telling me not to give up on that dream.
Encouraging you, yes.
Yes. So about 20 years ago, because I had you can only watch so many movies on a plane, I started kind of playing with a couple different manuscripts, and so fast forward to 20 years, here we are, and I'm delighted for the journey, and I have to say, in all honesty, it's the people you meet along the way, such as you, Mark, that has been the reward of this adventure.
Well, thank you so much. We really enjoyed your talk at the Wilmington Library. All the writers there were afterwards even said that all of the things that you had talked about would become part of their writing career too. That they would like to use some of your hints and your tools that you mentioned.
Yeah, certainly an adventure, and I think certainly write books, and especially fiction, which I love, and it's all about characters. And I can tell you, and I think I explained when we met last time, you meet some real characters, some scoundrels also in the industry, but nevertheless, it's been an adventure. And
so that's where you get some of your ideas.
Yes,
from your characters that you meet.
Yeah. You certainly meet a lot of characters. As you get older, you certainly meet a lot of characters throughout your life, and you can take pieces and parts of each of them, and also mine even your own soul in terms of strengths and weaknesses, in terms of character development, which I'm sure you find in your writings. Yeah.
Well, they say, you write best what you know best.
Yes.
So that's basically is you know, if you're if you're taking bits and pieces of the characters you know, so that makes it more believable.
Correct, absolutely.
Yeah, for
absolutely.
you, yeah. So tell us about one of your books. I know you have written Chasing Mayflies, which I thoroughly enjoy.
Oh, thank you. I so appreciate that, and I have to say the feedback that I've received from Chasing Mayflies has been just so heartwarming, and I think in your very kind review, I think you had mentioned both laughing and crying at the same time, and basically that has been by far the most feedback that I've received, the consistent feedback. And basically, just to share with the audience, the inspiration for the book came out of watching my father really have an incredible struggle and battle and courageous fight with lung cancer
Oh my God!
for over 5 years.
Yes.
And I'm the oldest of 6 kids.
Oh my God!
And my father passed away in 2009. He had 24 grandchildren at that time, and a couple of great grandchildren. But I often say that if I can be half the man that my father was,
Isn't that
I would be
wonderful?
I would be judged as a successful man. But I certainly knew that he was ready to meet his maker. But after he passed away, I started thinking about, and I'm part of the baby boom generation, and I think one of the things that I came across, which was so interesting, in 2011, is that beginning that year, 10,000 baby boomers would turn 65 every single day for the next 18 years. And basically, as much as my dad was ready to meet his maker, I started thinking about all, myself included, all the regrets that you certainly accumulate over your lifetime. And I thought that there would be an opportunity to tell a story. And what I found, and I don't know if you find this, Mark, in your reading or even in watching movies or TV, is that when you start to approach end-of-life themes, so much of that is so self-absorbed and so commercial. And so I wanted to tell a different sort of story. I wanted to get a message across that really to use almost as a Trojan horse. I wanted to use humor to kind of implant some meaningful story. So that's how I started, and I started writing this manuscript. So basically, Chasing Mayflies, to really boil it down, is based upon 2 friends, and Dennis Sullivan stops by to visit his estranged friend Jack Nagel as he's in a hospice preparing to die from lung cancer. And Jack has a lot of regrets. He lived a very fast life. He lost pretty much his family from gambling and a lot of other different sins, and he wanted to make life right. And so basically he asked his friend to really break him out of the hospice so that he could take care of a few things. And so that begins what we call R.I.P., a rip-roaring sort of a journey. And what we find is that as much as Dennis and Jack are really opposites, in many effects they are really trying to deal with things that happened to them in their life. So Jack, being a Vietnam War veteran, has to deal with what happened to him in Vietnam, and it made him very careless, so risk-free. Whereas Dennis became more pensive in terms of what happened in his life. And so basically, as much as my dad was the opposite of these main characters, I wanted to tell a story that would really embody the fact that it's never too late to try to make things right. And basically, one of the main themes that perhaps some of the audience here would recognize is that I used a symbol of a tree sculpture. So Joseph Wheelwright, who was this incredible sculptor, actually had an exhibit at Fruitlands, which isn't too far away from here, that my wife and I visited a few years ago. And basically what Joseph Wheelwright does is he goes through the woods of Vermont and he looks for the perfect pine tree or birch to actually take it and turn it upside down. So the root ball becomes the head, some of the trunks become its legs, and basically I use that as a symbol in the story to show that in order to make things right, it's never too late to change, but you have to be comfortable with turning things upside down. And so I know you're still laughing about some of the rip-roaring journey. So, it was a lot of fun. And I've also found out that as much as I love literary fiction, meaning that I love stories that are character-driven, certainly what makes people pick up a book is to have a good story. So I wanted a fast-moving story that wouldn't be too heavy and too sweet, but sort of balance that.
You know what? Another thing too is when one good thing about a book is that you continue to go back to it in your mind and remember things that you read in that book, that story, and that's what makes a good book. And I constantly think of things
Thank you.
that that went on in that story, and I said, "Oh my God, yeah, those two fellas actually did that," you know. And I would tell my wife about it, and she said, "What?"
Well, some of those things, I don't want to give the story away, but I think you said something to me about a manual transmission in a Renault, which is a French car. Basically, that happened to me when I was in France. I couldn't find reverse. So basically, that's the thing about trying to mine things that are happy, sad, or just incredibly crazy, and you sort of use everything in your life to kind of bring that back together.
Yes, and you certainly did in the story. You brought all these activities that we all have participated in and brought them to life. So
thank you, Mark.
It was good, and that's what you do about the characters. You make them so believable, and also the scenery, the settings are like you were even there. So. One of the scenes is you're traveling through the cemetery. I won't give the story away, but I could even feel myself walking along with you in the cemetery. So
thank you so much.
That was great. Yeah. So you had a great time with chasing mayflies.
I tell you, it's been a wonderful journey. I've received so much feedback. I got one letter from a woman that said that she had been in bed. She was had some foot surgery, couldn't get up for a few weeks, and she picked up chasing mayflies, and she ended up crying, not because she was sad, but because she thought it was a wonderful story, a love story actually at the end between two friends and the family. And so when you get feedback like that, and I know you being a writer, Mark, you're not looking for the big royalty checks, but getting feedback like that it touched someone's life or made them laugh or think through, as you just said, recall the story or some of its messages.
Your reviews are the most important
absolutely
thing, because you want to know that people got something out of the book, and they these are the high points that they got.
Right, exactly, true.
Yeah, so
very true.
It was great. So, anything else about that particular book, Chasing Mayflies? Did you have a tough time getting it published?
Oh my goodness! And I know I told you the long story. I don't know how long you have on this broadcast, but certainly that's been the other challenge, shall I say? Is we watched the Patriots win last night, for instance, and it's all about just moving forward 1 yard at a time. And certainly with Chasing Mayflies, that was the story. As much as I wanted to honor my dad. Trying to get any book published in and of itself is a true challenge. So, I actually, just to tell you a brief story, I had one contract, but the publisher wanted me to throw some money into it to have it published, and which I didn't think was fair. And had won quarterfinalist status in the Amazon Breakthrough Novel Contest, which has attracted in the past about 10,000 entries. So did well there. I continued to edit it. I got the runner-up prize for the Tuscany Award, and it was about ready to go to publication when, unfortunately, the publisher faced some difficult financial difficulties, and I had to shop it around and found Lectio Publishing, which was a wonderful publisher. So in and of itself, it had its own incredible journey to publication. So I tell you, I marked the date in July of 2016, and it was almost like Christmas Day for me to see something like that had been working on it for so many years come to fruition. So it meant an awful lot.
Well, that sounds great. You finally found a publisher that was willing to take a chance with you and put your book out there. And I think you're having quite a lot of success. And you were also saying that just having a book publisher print your book up is only half the challenge. You now have to help with marketing the book and etc. So
that's a very good point, Mark. I've had a lot of conversations with the publisher, Lectio Publishing. Again, I can't say enough about them. They are just first-rate, professional. Everything they've promised, they've followed through. But at the same time, as a small publisher, they've said that they've checked with the big guys in New York, and they're doing the same thing that the big guys are. Meaning that it's not like the romantic thought that you sit up in a cabin in the woods, you write a book, and then you throw it out and everything becomes a bestseller. No, you have to actually build a platform. You have to build a readership, which I've found out, takes an awful lot of work. It's wonderful meeting people, but you have to put the time in, and get out there and you can write the best book in the world, but if people don't know about it and aren't invited onto terrific programs, and I thank you again for this invitation, then people won't know it's out there. So making sure that it's on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, that you have book events at Barnes & Noble, that you meet with library groups. I did a presentation last week at Langley Adams in Groveland, and I had a wonderful turnout, and I loved that people came out on Monday night in the cold weather. But I mean, you have to work it. You have to run promotions. It has to be. You have to really go into sales somewhat, which is a difficult for a lot of writers because they love writing and perfecting that art. But then you have to take that hat off and become a marketeer.
And that's a full-time business in itself.
Totally different thing. And so what I try to do with that is try to build a readership for Chasing Mayflies, and in the meantime, get my next book ready, which again just came out a couple months ago.
Yes. So you've had quite a lot of success with getting a readership because you've been to all these different events, etc., and book sales and getting your book into bookstores, etc. And so those are all part of building your platform.
And to your point, I think you said it so well before, Mike, is that people see different things in the story. They read it different and they take different messages out of it. So, for instance, with Chasing Mayflies, I visited many different retirement communities. They love the book, right? At the same time, I had I've had books presented in high school and they're as part of their English course, or so it depends upon who the reader is, but trying to find that hook that people like a good story. Chasing Mayflies was reviewed by the union leader up in Manchester, and I thought it was the best characterization of the book. They said that in movie terms, it's like the bucket list meets the Dead Poet Society. So to me, that's my elevator pitch for Chasing Mayflies.
That sounds terrific.
Thank you.
Now, the next book you have is a Difficult Crossing. That I just started to read that. In fact, I downloaded it from Kindle.
Okay.
From the Kindle version, and so I've been looking at that, and that's a different twist.
A different twist. I mean, certainly, again, this story, I'm really date myself. This one goes back to when I got out of high school in 1976, and I've been struggling with wanting to write this book since then. I actually still have the manuscript from 1977 when I started playing with it. And basically, just to kind of boil it down here, is that I think every town, I'm sure Wilmington has the same, but I grew up in Salem, New Hampshire, and I wanted, in the 1970s, I was very curious about two people that were real staples in town. One was a World War II veteran that was rumored to have shell shock, and he used to pretty much wander around town and bring his own tea bags to different merchants and get a cup of water, and he was a gentle soul. My dad used to pick him up when he was bumming a ride, and I always wanted to write a story to honor his dedication, his military service. As it's funny, as you get older, your perspective changes with time, and as I started looking at this project again over the last 20 years or so, I was really more attracted to the other really landmark in town, which was this younger woman, about 30, that used to wander up and down Route 28 in Salem, New Hampshire, in high-heel shoes and a skirt, and she'd go into malls and she would look for change in some of the telephone booths and things of that nature. And for whatever reason, she was known around town as Morbid Mary, and which I always wondered why she was called that. And the most I could really come to is that that's just the nicknames that people lavish on those that we don't understand. So the woman was ridiculed for many years. So basically, when I took up the project, what I wanted to do was write a story, not in the Forrest Gump sort of style, that life is a box of chocolates, but more so, how do you take two people living on the edge and really bring them together and show a story of really commitment and pure love, and really contrast that against obsession. And what I came up with was really a psychological murder mystery, and it's been an adventure all itself, and something that I find, again, I try to embed good messages into it, but it's a different sort of story, and one again that I've been very happy with the feedback. I will tell you, and that I think the audience will find interesting, that as I was preparing the final edits for Difficult Crossing, what bothered me, as much as this story is fictional based, and I want to stress that, I knew that the World War II veteran actually passed away in about 10 years ago at the age of 83, and his obituary certainly highlighted his military service. But whoever this Morbid Mary character was, I never knew what her real name was, and it really bothered me.
Yes.
And as I was preparing the last edits, and sometimes heaven sends its gifts, with ribbon on it. I was at an anniversary dinner with my wife. We were having Chinese food. I cracked open a fortune cookie, and my fortune said, "An old love will come back to you." And the very next day, my youngest brother, called me up and said, "Check Facebook, check this page," and there I found this group discussing Morbid Mary. I found out what her real name was, and what really moved me after all these years was they were really regretting what had happened to her. Now, she certainly probably was on the autism spectrum, but what A Difficult Crossing really highlights, as much as it's a murder mystery to really, again, have the hook for people to like the story, is really to try to drive a bigger discussion regarding how, unfortunately, perception equals reality in many people's respects, and basically what really constitutes the courage that, for instance, this Mary character had, versus who was born with this affliction, versus Christopher McGuire, who, as the story opens, has just lost his family in a terrible plane crash, wants to raise his 8-year-old sister, but he becomes a victim to his cousin's jealous rage. He almost drowns, and he comes out of that experience suffering from oxygen deprivation, but he kind of leans a little bit on his handicap in order to hide behind that and not to be really chased by his cousin. So it really contrasts the courage of Mary versus Christopher, and basically how does Christopher really break out of that and discover his true center, and really what does courage mean? It's not just it's more than just a bell to be rung every day. It's something to respond to. So
that is wonderful. I only got to the
don't want to
part,
give the story away.
just the beginning part, and just talked about Christopher and his sister.
Yes.
That's about all I got so far, and then he's out meeting his cousin for the first time. So that's as far as I got, and so now you've filled in a lot of other things, and I said, wait a minute, I didn't get to that part. So I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you.
That sounds wonderful, right?
Thank you.
So you've published this A Difficult Crossing through the same publisher, Alexio, and it looks like you might have similar success with
I
that
hope so.
too.
I hope so. I've been getting a lot of great feedback, and again, I think you and I discussed at the library. When you write something like this, it's like putting one of your children out there. As much as you love it and the publisher loves it, you're hoping that the general public will pick it up and read it and like it. So
we'll say, "Wow, this is." I got to go back to this and read it a second time. Yeah. So that's terrific. Yeah. Now, if people wanted to get a hold of you, do you have an Amazon author page and things like that?
Yep, you can go on VincentDonovanBooks.com. There's a whole page there regarding a website regarding these two books, and there's a contact form to get in touch with me. I mean, I'll also share, if you want to reach out to me directly, you can reach through my page, or you can send me an email, vindonovan@gmail. It's a pretty simple email address. I also have a Facebook page, so it's and I've been getting a lot of making a lot of great friends that way, which is wonderful.
Now the website again is what, Vincent?
Vincent Donovan Books.
All one word.
Yes.
All one word. Yeah.
Yeah.
.com. Yeah. Very good. That's terrific. That's a key area, and then from there they can branch out and get the other information to you. Do you have any upcoming events that are going to be? I know you said you were recently at a bookstore.
Yes. I was at Barnes & Noble last month. They're inviting me back. I'm just trying to set a date. It'll be coming up in the next, I would say, in the next 7 or 8 weeks. I'm going to be down in some libraries, I think, in southeastern Massachusetts coming up, but I continue to update my site in terms of upcoming events.
So on your website,
yeah.
they have all that information.
Yeah.
That sounds good. Now, do you contact the Barnes & Noble stores individually yourself?
That's the challenge, my friend.
Yeah.
I had hoped that you can make one contact and everything would just filter down, but unfortunately, I found over the last 2 books that they're pretty much independent entities.
Yes.
I have to say, because I grew up in Salem, New Hampshire, the Barnes & Noble in Salem, New Hampshire has been tremendously supportive, because I should also note that both of these books are based locally. So the story takes place in the Merrimack Valley.
That's true. That's
so
true. Yeah.
that also is a real interest point for the readership, and especially in Barnes & Noble in Salem, New Hampshire, since it's locally based, they've been kind enough to not only have the events, bring the books in. They've been actually stocking some of those at Barnes & Noble. The book rack in Newburyport has also been very supportive. The books there. So yes, I've been very lucky again, but it's a lot of missionary work, shall I say?
Do you have to sometimes bring your own stock of books, or do they buy books and put them out there for you?
The Barnes & Noble they'll order in
Okay.
the books. I will say, certainly, as you start to learn some of the business end of the book, that if it's not selling, they do have a return policy that they'll send back to the publisher, which is a most unfortunate event.
Yeah.
So you want to have those book events, and you want to talk it up and talk it up on your
Now,
website.
when you have those book events, do they have? Do you bring in refreshments, or do you just talk, or you just meet people, or?
Well, you can have different. I've had different sort of venues. So Barnes & Noble, for instance, Chasing Mayflies was a wonderful event when I had that back in 2016. They even made up a different a Chasing Mayflies drink in the Starbucks. It was a Dennis cappuccino or something. So that was really fun, and I did that in 2016. This past December, it was like a present to me. They had an opening just before Christmas, a Saturday before Christmas, which you can imagine still was filled.
Wow.
And so I was there, and so I like to say that I was under a lot of different Christmas trees this year. But they'll bring the books in, and I can meet and talk to people. Some of the library events, for instance, last week, and I put a whole presentation together in terms of the book, and I've also gone to some libraries or even other book club events where is a different sort of talk, because if the people have read the book, then you can of course have a much deeper conversation in terms of what the symbolism of it is and different things. But some of it, as you can well imagine, Mark, I'm sure from your experience, is just trying to tease people, because let's be honest, if you go into a bookstore, you go into a library, you're competing with a lot of different millions of wonderful manuscripts.
Sure, yeah. So. Well, very good. This has been a wonderful conversation, Vincent, and we've learned a lot about your 2 books and your writing career and your marketing situation, where you are going out there in the community and meeting people, and so it sounds like a lot of hard work, but it's also a wonderful experience to meet different people and share your enthusiasm with them. I can tell just from this couple of times that we've talked that you are very enthusiastic about your books and also your writing career.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
So it's been a pleasure meeting you, and maybe some of your enthusiasm will rub off on me too.
No, you're a wonderful writer, my friend.
Yes.
And I can't thank you enough for the invitation, and meeting you and your fellow colleagues at the library was wonderful. Thank you.
So I think that if you have anything else to add, I was going to close the program, but again, please, if you want to contact Vincent, please go to his website, vincentdonovanbooks.com, and you can look that up on the internet, and then from there you can find out about all of his other activities and events. So this is Mark's Musings. We are at wctv.org in Wilmington, Massachusetts. The program was coming to a close now. We're happy to have you listen, and please stop by next time. Bye-bye now.
Thank you, Mark.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye now.